Hello, everyone, and welcome to Seriously Loco, the Seriously Crazy fan podcast for El Paso Locomotive FC. It has been quite the long layoff, but we are back and we got the full crew here. I'm joined by Austin Young. Austin, what's up, man?
How's it going, everybody? Nice to see everybody, even though it's virtual.
Yeah.
But back at it.
Yeah. I think we thought this would go a lot shorter. Now, obviously, it's enforced by my distance from El Paso too, not just the quarantine. But yeah, it is virtual, but it's good to be back, I think. And we've also got Mikka Burrell. Mikka, what's going on?
Hey. Yeah, I know. Now we're like we were talking about in Slack. Now we have to schedule things by Mountain and Eastern time. Yeah, but it's all good. It's all good.
Yeah, I'm out here struggling in Ohio, so yeah, trying to find my footing out here. But luckily, Locomotive games have not been occurring in person, so I don't feel I'm not getting the FOMO that I would have otherwise. But we're also joined Christian Canales. Christian, what's going on, man?
Good to be back doing this again.
Yeah, no, it certainly is. And Christian, I noticed you got a Red Sox hat on. COVID doing some damage to your Red Sox plans as well.
Yeah, man, we're supposed to take a week-long trip to New York and Boston. We're actually going to leave a week or not even a week from. Yeah, no. When were we leaving? I think we were leaving on Friday. Was when we were supposed to be leaving. We were going to spend a couple of days in New York and Boston and, get to see Fenway and stuff. But it's not to be, unfortunately, but we didn't lose any money on it. So,
well, that's always good to get the refund back. But yeah, speaking of baseball and Locomotive adjacent news, minor league baseball not getting a season. I know obviously all of us lean more on the soccer side, but kind of sad to see a year go by without minor league baseball. I mean, do you guys feel any type of way about that, or is it just kind of the state of things right now and what we have to accept about not containing this pandemic?
It is kind of sad. I do like baseball, although obviously not as much as soccer, but I feel like baseball is so inextricably intertwined with the American summer. So when baseball is canceled, it's almost like summer's canceled. That is sad. I do like going to a Chihuahuas game every now and then. But yeah, I mean, it's like you said, maybe if we had contained things a little bit better, this wouldn't be necessary, but it is what it is, I suppose.
Yeah, it is sad. I mean, I'm a big baseball fan. Christian, I would have been jealous if you would have gone to Fenway. Just putting that out there, but I always what was going through my head was if the majors come back, I figured at least AAA would come back, at least. So hearing that all of minor league was canceled was kind of a shock, at least to me, anyways.
Yeah, I mean, the tough thing for me, having just gotten to Toledo, Ohio, is we're living downtown right now, and I can literally walk 2 blocks and be at the Toledo Mud Hens Stadium, which is the AAA affiliate for the Tigers, which is Detroit's just up the road. So I was still, I was like, oh yeah, AAA baseball still right here. Who knows? Maybe Toledo could land a USL League One team to play over here. Who knows? And now, obviously no season for the Mud Hens. So I'm going to be walking past an empty baseball stadium all summer. It's going to be a little depressing, but we are hearing now, as we shift into Locomotive talk and all of this, we are hearing that, USL is planning on coming back. This is kind of a series of announcements that we got the initial kind of hype announcements of them coming back. Then we got a week-long, staged announcement of, all of the formats and all this, and USL, attempted to hype it as big as possible. And we had kind of this weird thing where USL was announcing that it was coming back and the format and all of that simultaneously, Texas COVID cases increasing, to the point where Texas is, shutting back down. Arizona is like among one of the worst states right now for new COVID cases. Florida, huge amount of new COVID cases. So like, how are you guys dealing with the kind of this idea that like we're announcing all of this stuff and how USL is coming back against the backdrop of like COVID clearly not being dealt with like in a very like real way? We still are very much in the middle of a pandemic. That was a loaded question, like kind of, but it's just like the state of things right now. I don't know.
I guess it's confusing. You don't really know how to feel because, especially, people like ourselves and, the people who listen to this show, you can't help but feel excited when you hear, soccer's coming back, your team's playing again.
Yeah.
When you read that and when you hear it, you get, all these feelings of positivity. And then 30 seconds later, on Twitter, Facebook, whatever, you see another article fly by about, how many new COVID cases there are and how things aren't, normal, like we're trying to make them. And it's hard to, I can't criticize, USL or any of these leagues that are doing. I mean, they're doing their job. They have a job to do, and it's to get people excited about things. And so I don't know. It's hard to. Life is an emotional roller coaster right now for everyone, I think.
I mean,
that's our podcast episode title right there.
Yeah, life is an emotional roller coaster. It's like Six Flags out here.
But yeah, I think Christian hits on the nail. It's weird, but it's like you understand why like the bigger leagues are coming back, but then you think about a league like USL, and it's almost like, do they really need to come back? Type of deal. Even though as much as you want to see it, so yeah, it's weird.
That's actually a really interesting point about the big leagues coming back, Austin, because in that context, it kind of makes sense because these big leagues have a lot of TV revenue that they still rely on. Gate receipts aren't as much of a thing for some of the, for example, like the top 5 leagues in Europe. So for USL to come back when they rely so much more on match day revenue just seems kind of counterintuitive because there's no uniform, I guess, allowance for who can have fans and who can't, or are you only going to have season ticket holders, or, whatever the case may be. I know we'll get into it specifically with Locomotive, but it just, at first blush, it just seems kind of weird because the match day experience is really what drives the revenue for the clubs and for the league. So I don't know how you replicate that in post-pandemic times. So
with cardboard cutouts.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. Well,
I mean, they're not going to be eating many concessions or anything, so I don't know how that works. But yeah,
no more $11 beers, so those cutouts are cut off.
Yeah, you get a text from your credit card company like, "Hey, you spent a couple $100 down at Southwest University Park, and it turns out your cutout was hitting the concessions pretty hard." They're like, "Yeah, we went ahead and took the liberty of ordering your cutout some food down here." No, I just it is a bit strange, as he said, Mikka, and everybody. I think everyone is caught in between because we obviously like the whole point of this show is to talk about El Paso Locomotive, and it's tough when there's not games going on. All of the things that we kind of had planned, all of the things that we were thinking about doing this season, are put on hold. And so we obviously want the season to take place in some form or fashion. We want to be able to watch Locomotive and to see these players that, we spent the whole offseason really kind of like looking at this team and seeing how they could compete and bounce back from a deep playoff run, all of these things that kind of combined into the hype of a season. And it's just, we've got that feeling of just like unfulfilled, it's a lack of fulfillment, it's just like, we're just waiting, like maybe this will happen. And so when USL does say like, we're going to come back and in this format or this reduced format, it is exciting. But it's definitely been tough to see, that against the backdrop of, we're going to have fans. And it's like, can we, is that a good idea? And it's tough to see, but because earlier this week we had seen the announcement, as you said, Christian, the cardboard cutouts. I mean, I know the text went out in the group chat of, us pooling our resources and getting our Seriously Loco cardboard cutouts in the stands, because I think we all kind of individually voiced our concerns about going to a match in person, but that kind of gave me the idea, like maybe Locomotive's thinking or preparing for like no fans and having a plan for closed door games. But then a couple days later, on Steve Kaplowitz's show on ESPN Radio, he said Brad Taylor was interviewed from Mountain Star and said that they hope to have up to 2,700 people at that first Locomotive game of the season, the home opener. And 2,700 puts it just about a third of the way full, I think, at Southwest University Park. Yeah. So your guys' thoughts on, I mean, Mountain Star is obviously aiming to have fans, aiming to have a decent chunk. I mean, 2,700 is not a small number. What are your guys' thoughts on them restarting, this season with fans, with the way things have gone in Texas recently?
Well, I mean, the first thing that comes to my mind is, okay, if you're going to have, like you said, roughly a third of people in the stadium, is that with social distancing involved? Or are you going to have people, distance throughout the stadium? And if so, how are you going to be, I guess, kind of policing, their movement around the stadium? Even as they're waiting to get into the stadium, they're going to be in a line. I don't see how you can, I mean, there's just so many things that you'd have to look out for that logistically, I'm curious how they plan to do that, or if they even plan to. And number two, I'm also curious. I don't know if he had said this on Steve's show, but whether Mountain Star and Locomotive have consulted local health authorities about this. I mean, I know they would have to probably have some kind of permission for these things at the local level, but it's just, I have so many questions. I mean, right. Yeah, you could say, yeah, we're going to have fans, but realistically, how does that work? And then, of course, the fans themselves, I mean, there's a level of, and this goes for the pandemic generally. I mean, there's a level, I think, of personal responsibility, and who knows if fans are going to be able to do that. I mean, people come with their kids who it's hard to kind of tell them what's going on and that you need to be social distancing or wearing your mask or whatever the case may be. So, and then, of course, the supporters section is not the same thing if you're going to not allow it to be full, Right. So it's just, I don't know. I know that really at the end of the day, it's a way to hopefully get some revenue in through the gates. But I wonder if the cost of the, I guess, experience is too great, and of course to people's lives and their health. So,
yeah, I mean, one of the interesting things that came out of USL's statements about this was they want teams to discourage the supporters from singing because of the potential droplet transmission from that type of activity. I mean, do you think that's something that USL could even, in theory, like these teams could even really police? Like, what's the plan if the supporter section is singing, even if it is a third full, like if they're singing, what's the recourse for an usher going down there? Like, hey, you guys need to stop singing or whatever. Like, are they going to kick out like the people who actually did come, like out of the 2,700? Like, you're going to kick out a certain, I don't know. It seems like a tough thing to actually realistically control. How do you guys feel about like Mikka was talking about, just like, how do you guys feel about their ability to actually enforce some of the things that might make this like a realistically safe event?
I can't imagine doing it at all. Cause I mean, you say or they're saying that like, okay, we discourage singing. Well, at what point does singing differentiate from cheering? And if you can't cheer, then why are you there? So
Right.
It's you can't. I don't think you can do it. And then even when you start talking about the social distancing, how you're going to space them out when they're when you're assigning seats or whatever, how do you differentiate? Like if there's a family of 8 going, do they all still have to sit together, or do they not? And then, what's the point of going if, there's going to be 4 pods of 2 from the same group scattered all over the state? It's just, I don't know. I would imagine that they have some plan for it. I don't think that they would just come out and say, oh, we're going to have 2,700 people and, we'll figure it out later. But it's just, just like with everything else that, the teams in this league do, is we're just going to be kept in the dark until, the time comes. So
I think the only way they can really police it is what FIFA did with Mexico with the whole chanting. Would maybe like the league gives fines to these clubs if the fans start cheering or something, but I think
that just hurts the bottom line even more.
Yeah.
I mean,
so it's I don't know how they plan to stop fans from cheering at all. Because like Christian said, you're going there for a reason. You're gonna cheer. Soccer games brings out singing, so I don't know. That's weird.
Yeah. I know there was a video that came out on Loco, and I think the Chihuahuas at the time, social media platforms, about some of the protocols that they were going to introduce. That I think there's going to actually be temperature screenings at the gates, which I don't really know. Obviously, I think we all know now enough by watching the news and just broadly paying attention that just because someone doesn't have a fever doesn't mean they don't have COVID. But at the same time, these type of protocols and in trying to enforce the social distancing side, it's just tough, I think. Because I think what's going to end up happening is I think they are going to spread every single ticket holder out. But then, inevitably a husband and wife bought tickets together. They try to sit them 3 seats apart. They sit together, because there's no one in between them. So it's well, I'm just going to sit with the person that I live with or whatever. Now, an usher's involved in trying to get them separated, despite the fact that maybe they don't need to focus on them. Maybe they need to worry about the random group of people that's just I don't know. I just think it's a weird situation, and I'm sure like you guys said, I'm sure they have a plan. We haven't seen all the details of it yet, but it is a bit awkward. And I mean, I guess really the discussion becomes would you guys at this point feel comfortable going to a game right now?
No, I personally don't. I've actually already called my ticket rep, and luckily they gave me the option to roll over my tickets to next season, but.
Yeah.
At least personally, until there's a vaccine in place, outside of leaving my house for necessities, I don't really feel comfortable about it at all, regardless of it being Locomotive game.
Yeah.
It just seems so bold to me. They're gonna be as far as I know, I might be missing something obscure, but the first league in the world to have fans back in the stadium. What makes I'm curious what emboldens them to make that decision, to think that they can handle that.
Yeah,
that's an excellent point. I didn't even think about that.
Yeah, neither did I.
But I mean, me personally, I probably will not attend any matches if there are any this season with fans, for a couple different reasons. I mean, number one, even if it was relatively safe, and arguably there is some science out there that outdoor events are a bit safer than being inside and
absolutely.
Terrible, having the AC blowing on you in a restaurant is different than being outside in a park. But
right.
But even so, there would be, I feel like there would be so many restrictions where the experience is just not even worth it.
Right.
And so for me, that's part of it, on top of just, like everyone else, I'm worried about, bringing this disease home, or, there's no, and then you've heard of people that are waiting on their test results, or they're positive already and they still go out. How are you going to know that somebody like that doesn't show up to the stadium?
Right.
It's just, Christian makes an excellent point. I mean, why does USL Championship think they are special and they can pull this off when there are leagues with infinitely greater resources that are not even contemplating this at the moment?
Yeah.
It is really, again, I understand that this is a league that is so dependent on match day revenue, but I don't know.
The interesting thing, I think, in watching the leagues in Europe return, obviously it's so different, as you said, Mikka, with the TV revenue. And so, but I think at the same time, in a place like Germany, where the Bundesliga has been back, is now like they've concluded their season. But Germany like kind of got things under control, and then restarted, and we're still extremely strict about their protocols, like for the players and staff being in bubbles, and socially distancing at the games, and all of these things. To the point where, they literally I think we spoke about it the last time we recorded, like they suspended a manager for 2 weeks because he had to go back into a self-quarantine because he bought a toothbrush. So I think it's interesting when we talk about these teams like traveling. We know that USL is not buying like private jets to fly everywhere. They're they're going to be on buses or whatever. So they're going to have to like stop on long road trips. They're going to have to like, you can't just like drive for however long. I think it's like 12 hours or something, or like 14 hours to Salt Lake. Something like that. I don't know. It's pretty far.
Well, they'll be flying that one, won't they? But
that's kind of my. That's kind of my point. Is like, if the players are flying, like they're gonna fly commercial. Like they're not chartering planes or anything like that. And like, I don't know, anyone who's traveling right now, I just assume like has coronavirus. Like if you're flying like right now, I just assume you've got it. Like there's no way there's no way. I don't know. So I just think it'll be interesting. Like, I mean, maybe the planes will be empty. Like maybe it'll essentially be a private jet. I don't know. Like,
I mean, American Airlines and all those other horrible like airlines are already saying we're going to stop requiring masks and we're going to start selling the middle seats. So I don't know. Maybe this is an opportunity for Southwest to like do the right thing. But
I mean, the team always travels via Southwest, anyway.
They do, don't they?
Yeah. So I just think it's silly. Tough because I think like we even saw in MLS, FC Dallas arrived in the bubble at Orlando, where it's basically like all the players are in these hotels, like quarantined essentially, separated from everyone, and 6 players have tested positive now for COVID, and they weren't positive before they got there. So like they're in the bubble, and now there's 6 positive cases on one team. And so that just, I mean, and that's with this whole hub idea where we're not going to have contact with anyone in the outside world until the season is complete, and they're still getting it. So that's the type of thing that just makes me concerned, because like how many players are going to end up sitting out games because they have COVID, like in USL, where it's like, well, I wish he was available, but he got coronavirus because they were traveling or something like that. It just seems crazy. And that's not even, beginning to talk about the risk to obviously like other staff and then the fans as well, like who are just like at risk in the communities. But I get it. It is like a tough situation because we want sports back. We love sports. It's like what we dedicate a lot of our time to. But it's just tough when you look at like these other people who have kind of got it under control and are still being like way overly cautious about their whole protocols. And meanwhile, USL is like, no, we're going to travel and it's going to be fine. Like, so it just seems a little crazy. I don't know. Like, it's tough to get over that for me, like, quite honestly. But
well, and also like the fact that they're so adamant on doing this, and like Christian said, apparently being one of the first major leagues to come back with fans, it makes me worry about the financial health of the league and the viability of it long term. Because, you know, they're like any other business that's really hurting right now because of this situation. But I mean, as you know, Phil, from covering some of the lower leagues, I mean, the clubs can pretty quickly go out of existence here in the United States. And so it's, you know, we don't have a bunch of clubs that are like fan owned in the way that they are in Europe, or that, you know, have more of a safety net, if you will, because they're just like any other company. So that it is a little bit worrying to me that they're trying to like push this along, because it's like, what does that really mean then?
Right. But if it is going to happen and it is going to take place, we do have a league structure to preview now. And we got the groups, West and East. We got the group divisions. There's some real interesting ones in there, and I think Eighth Notch knocked the meme game out of the park. That's normally like kind of my area of expertise with the memes, but Eighth Notch really nailed it with the Sacramento Reno group. I think. It's those two teams with Tacoma and Timbers 2. Timbers 2. With USL holding the door for Reno and Sacramento to go into the playoffs, like, because top two teams advance. So, gave them an easy group. But Locomotive, on the other hand, a pretty interesting group in their draw. New Mexico United, Real Monarchs, Colorado Springs in the group. Do you think that it... Well, first we'll talk about the team that I think a lot of people assumed would be in Locomotive's group that's not, and maybe some of the implications. El Paso avoid Phoenix in the group stage. Yeah. What do you guys think about either the lack of a Phoenix match, or, you know, this potentially avoiding one of the stronger teams in the league in our group and making this, because this could have easily been like the true group of death. If it was Phoenix instead of one of maybe Monarchs or Colorado Springs, which I know is weird to say about the reigning champions, but Phoenix obviously insane last year. Have Locomotive like turned a little bit of a Houdini here by avoiding Phoenix in the first round, or are you going to miss having that chance to play the best team?
Personally, I would have loved to have Phoenix, like, because we're playing each squad 4 times, right? Like, I could have seen us going 2-2 against Phoenix, honestly. Like, granted, it's hard to beat a team twice in a season, but more than twice, you know, it just really gets even harder. But even just that, like, if we were to advance to the playoffs, just already having that competition level against Phoenix would have been nice. Not that we're not going to get in this group, but I think being able to come out of the, like you said, the true group of death would have been really something to, like, hold our head high about, you know?
I don't know. It's still a super rough group, you know. Yeah. From the 6 games we played against these teams last year, we came away with 9 points. 6 of those being from the 2 wins against Switchbacks. So, you know, came away with 3 points from 2 games against New Mexico and Monarchs. So if we were going to kick anyone out to put Phoenix in, it was going to be Switchbacks. Yeah. So I think that having Phoenix in there would have been a really hard time for us. You know, I think that they're a team that we can compete with, but still, like, I think that hoping for 2 wins out of 4 is still pretty optimistic and hopeful. I think we would have been happy to come away with 2 draws against them last season.
Yeah, I think I agree with that. I think sporting wise, it's probably best that we avoid them in the group, because, I mean, it seems like they had probably one of the best off seasons in terms of transfers in, and have really reinforced a lot of areas that probably were already strong to begin with, especially their attack. Yeah. Whereas we lost a couple pieces. I mean, granted, we added some too, but Phoenix still, to me, is probably the best team in the league. But from a rivalry and a geographical perspective, I was a little disappointed to see Real Monarchs make our group. Just because I don't know. I guess I'm just being a little bit OCD, but like Phoenix it just seems like Phoenix belongs in our group. I mean, they're just 5 hours up the road on I-10, right. So it's just kind of odd to see Real Monarchs grouped in with us.
Yeah.
Do y'all think that maybe it was either Switchbacks or Phoenix that was going to be in our group? Like they were between those two teams, possibly, just geographically.
Yeah, I mean, to me, Switchbacks makes sense, just because it's straight shot up past Albuquerque, but. Yeah, I don't know. I think that we probably would have struggled, to get that many results against Phoenix, but we'll see, I guess.
What do you guys think about?
Oh, sorry.
Oh, no, go for it, Christian.
I was going to say, I mean, as a fan, I'm kind of glad that we get Monarchs in our group just because of the way things went down against them last year. So from that perspective, I guess it'll be satisfying to see what we can do against them if we can finally get a win against them. We went 2 draws in the regular season last year, and then the nonsense that was the conference final. So I'm happy about it in that sense.
What do you guys think about? So USL, obviously, in the way that they've divided this up, they've tried to do it in a way where it limits travel for everyone, keeps games regional, but in doing so, they broke up 2 of the kind of supporter-led competitions with Copa Tejas and the Four Corners Cup. They've kind of split both of those, with us being the only Copa Tejas team outside of Group D, and then New Mexico United and Real Monarchs separated from Phoenix, with Phoenix landing outside of that. So do you think that crossed the minds of people at USL at all, or do you think they just kind of went like, you know what, it's kind of a casualty of this format and we're trying to like do what's best for the teams, and that may not include like these type of competitions? Because I mean, in a different scenario, you could say like they could have just put all of the Texas teams in a group and made Copa Tejas like group Copa Tejas, and it could have been kind of a cool like marketing side of it, I guess, even if it does include us having to go all the way to McAllen and like, or whatever, like way out to the middle of nowhere, or Edinburgh, wherever RGV is. So I don't know. Do you guys think they should have taken that into consideration more, or are you happy with the way that they kind of cut things up?
I think in structuring the season, I think that they had more of a responsibility to the teams than to the fans. And so in that sense, I think they made the right call. I think players and, probably staff with the teams would have been unhappy about having to travel that far for all of our matches, as opposed to the relatively close match in Albuquerque. I think probably even Colorado Springs might be closer than all 3 of the other Copa Tejas teams. I might be wrong, but I think that they had a responsibility to the teams and not the fans. So I don't think that crossed their mind.
I agree with Christian. I think they were more worried about, actually getting the geographic part structured, but they have a chance to make it up with the out of group games that are going to be scheduled. So I hope they do take advantage of that and schedule those games for the clubs that have their little, their cups, so they have a chance to make it up.
Playoffs against Copa Tejas rivals, I guess.
That'd be pretty interesting.
The group, though, I mean, Mikka, you brought up when we were speaking about Phoenix, you brought up their off-season business and one team impacted by Phoenix's off-season business, New Mexico United, seeing Santi Moar move from the black and gold to the Firebird red. So New Mexico United as a prospect, obviously a rivalry game, obviously a lot of kind of history, even in a short amount of time, built between the two teams in terms of the 2-2 draw at the swap with the red cards for Yuma and Moar, and then a very regrettable game in Albuquerque for Locomotive. So between that, I mean, this is, for us at least, Locomotive fans, this has got to be like the matchup of the group.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that everyone's going to be looking immediately to that fixture when the schedules do drop in full, if they haven't already. I don't know. But it would be nice. It would be nice to get some kind of result on the road. I think it would really lift the fans. I mean, this has been a tough time for everyone. And sometimes, we do look to these distractions like sport to help us feel better. And it would be just really cool to get something on the road from them. But yeah, if they had been in any other group but ours, that would have been just unacceptable. So good thing they are. At least we have that.
What do you guys think about facing off with United? Obviously, it will lack a little bit of the punch without the same amount of fans and kind of that whole involvement. But there's an element of revenge in this group, I think. And Christian, I know you feel more strongly about one revenge on one team than maybe United, but in this group. But in both cases, for United and Real Monarchs, Locomotive kind of go into those games with a little bit of a chip on their shoulder in this, seems like.
No, absolutely. No, it's really a shame that, the way that things are going to be played out, especially in New Mexico, where they've already confirmed that they won't have any fans.
Right.
I'm sure that the players are happy just to be playing again, but, I'm also sure that they're upset, just like we all are, that this is soccer, but not as we know it. So it's all bittersweet. I was just thinking, as we were talking right now, even if, somehow we do end up winning the championship this year, I almost don't want to win the championship this year just because I feel like it'll have an asterisk next to it. And so it won't be taken seriously in, 2 years or 3 years whenever things really do start getting back to normal. That sounds really doom and gloom. Things will get to normal sooner than that, hopefully. But yeah, it's just, the whole thing is just strange. But as fans, we'll take whatever we can get, and we'll feel as excited as we can about it while it's happening.
The rematch, Austin, of facing Monarchs in this group, and the way that things ended last season. I mean, with that stoppage time winner from them in the Western Conference final. I mean, do you think? I mean, obviously the players are going to be thinking about it, but how does that that draw? Do you think that almost forms a rivalry, I guess, in a way, without there being too much? The regular season games against Monarchs were you both played out to draws, but that postseason game, do you consider Monarchs almost on the level of rivals that we have with our geographic rivals, either here in Texas or New Mexico or Phoenix?
Yeah, I think immediately right after that final, it sprung up between fans, between the players, between everybody. So it's going to be interesting. And I think the big thing that we have to remember about Monarchs is, since they're an MLS 2 squad, what's going to happen there with, players being sent up or being brought back down? What's going to happen if they have to have a set roster, or especially with the MLS going into their own little hub, how that's going to work out. So I'm a little more intrigued with that, what's going to happen with them. But definitely I expect a couple red cards to be handed out within this group within all these games, honestly. We'll probably see a record number more than in a regular season length with this group going on.
Do you think there's any possibility that with the amount of games played between these teams that there is even more animosity built, or from a sporting perspective, between these players, because we're used to just playing the, home and away against each team? If these players get used to each other and are playing that frequently, do you think there's even more possibility for more animosity? Is that possible?
Yeah, we may see some new rivalries born or emboldened, I guess, because familiarity breeds contempt. So, yeah, that could be fun.
I think it's definitely going to happen.
That might be the episode title right there. Familiarity breeds contempt.
I think we need to save that one for when the first brawl breaks out, though.
Yeah. Well, we know, there's plenty of players on Locomotive who are ready for a scrap at any point. We've seen it in the past, but Switchback's kind of the outlier here, and another team that did some business in the offseason and maybe might feel a bit hard done by that the season isn't taking place as it normally would. Do you guys think that Switchbacks could kind of be a dark horse in this group, and potentially this is the group of death? We just don't know it yet.
Yeah, maybe so. I mean, their new head coach is highly rated from what I can tell. I think they won their first game back before play was stopped against
2-1.
Was it OKC,
Energy.
right? Mm-hmm. So yeah, I mean, they certainly got off to a better start than we did. So I know they were kind of one of those like quote easy wins last season, but that might not be the case this season. And so yeah, maybe we are in the group of death and we're about to learn. But yeah.
How do you guys feel about Switchbacks? I mean, we know Jordan Burt and his mustache are famous in the Shithouse 11. So do you think they pose a potential threat with the amount of? I mean, they by from what I can tell, just like gleaning from their social and then like looking at their roster and stuff, they make quite a few moves in the offseason, and it looks like their deal with Colorado Rapids led to quite a few players joining the roster. So I don't know. They have the feel of maybe we shouldn't be like overlooking them or seeing them as a potential easy win, easy 3 points.
Yeah, like Mikka said, we don't know. Maybe it is really the group of death, and we're about to find out. But I mean, let's bring on the challenges and stuff. But yeah, it's going to be interesting. I mean, it's when you go from a squad that we're so used to them being an easy win, but having to play them 4 times is really the tough part of it, regardless of how easy the win might be. But yeah,
the group though, it is. I don't know. I think it'll be a tough group, and I don't know that there's an easy group aside from Reno's and Sacramento's in the USL.
They shouldn't even play the game. Just have them start in the playoffs.
Yeah, I mean, I half expected. I'm not even going to lie. I half expected a lot of the 2 teams to just kind of withdraw, almost in the same way that we talked about minor league baseball at the beginning. Like, I feel like it's kind of strange, honestly, that MLS is like not just saying, "Hey, we're going to like keep these players available for our first team, and like bring them to the hub or whatever, and not really leave them with anything back in the 2 team." But obviously they're persevering, and Real Monarchs as a result, like getting a shot at retaining their title in whatever way that is possible, I guess. But yeah, do you guys have any kind of unfounded predictions here for this group for Locomotive? What do you guys feel is the outcome here? Do you think Locomotive make the playoffs out of this group?
Yeah,
I think so.
Yeah, I do. I think actually
so.
Real Monarchs are going to be one of the 2 to drop out, because I mean, I'm sure they've taken some of those players to Florida.
Yeah.
As part of MLS's restart. And if I recall correctly, they didn't exactly get off to the best start when the season started for them.
Yeah.
So it'll be hard, I think, to retain their title or to fight for it in the first place. So.
Right. What do you guys both said yes, Austin and Christian.
Yeah, I actually agree with Mikka. My bold prediction is Monarchs probably finishing last in the group.
Wow.
But I think it's going to be us and United going to playoffs, though.
Yeah, I mean, I just don't think that. I think this is the shit on Monarch segment of the show, I guess. But I just don't think that they're a team that is necessarily built maybe for this. I don't know that they're. I think especially some of the I guess players that are lower on the totem pole, maybe that might not get so much asked of them because they can have those reinforcements, from Salt Lake coming in, are going to have a lot asked of them. And who knows, they just might not be used to that intense of a season. I don't know if we know how long the season is going to stretch out, like how condensed these games are going to be. So that's another thing to consider as well.
That's a good point.
Is how much these teams are going to be playing. Our guys, I think, especially with how much we asked of them last year, I think that, they're ready for, to have to play a lot of minutes, but I don't think that all teams are necessarily built for that.
Yeah. I think, as you guys have been saying, just like being built for it, I think if ever there was a manager that could thrive in this kind of group scenario, it's Mark Lowry. Because we saw at the beginning of last season kind of how tough he could make a team on the road, even with kind of limited time to get them ready. They weren't necessarily like beating a bunch of people or anything like that, but they were extremely tough to actually take a win off of when they were on the road. Like, I think it was 8 or 9 games on the road unbeaten to start the season, which is just a very good record, I think, for the amount of games that, in USL, you see that most of the wins are coming at home for these teams. Not a lot of teams are going on the road and winning every single game aside from Phoenix. So I think in this case, like, we could see kind of that tough Lowry mentality really pay off in those road games, because if you win your home games and don't lose on the road, you're going to be the best team by a long distance. So I think his mentality could really come in handy in this group. And as you guys said, I think Monarchs may struggle just because those players that are on the bubble for MLS are going to be in the bubble in Orlando. So it's going to be like potentially they won't be available, or players that normally would be available for Monarchs won't be there. And then I think depending on the fixture congestion, we saw New Mexico United like really struggle at times especially towards the end of last season. They really struggled with their fixture congestion. And so if there are like kind of these quick turnarounds between matches, it could really like put a strain on them. And we know that they lost some pretty big pieces in the offseason. So, early on in the campaign, they were winning a lot of games, like these shootouts where they were scoring like 3-4 goals a game. We don't know that that's going to happen again. Like, we don't know what their attack is really going to look like that much this year. So, because they lost some, pretty much the biggest pieces of their attack are gone, So as much kind of crap as we got about losing Kiesewetter and Velasquez, like they've lost equally important pieces. So I think it'll be interesting. I think it's going to be a little bit of a war of attrition and a little bit of like who stays healthy. But I think Locomotive have an edge because they're so like founded in Lowry's tactics that regardless of who's in there, there's going to be a lot of consistency in terms of the system, and I think that ends up benefiting someone like when it comes to this type of competition. I don't know, but we did have kind of an unforeseen situation pop up though this past weekend. Guys, Alexy Bosetti departed the club. It was a mutual consent, like termination of his contract, and he heads back to France. I mean, I saw his Insta story. He's back in Nice, he was enjoying some good food back in Nice. He's back home already, but Alexy leaving. What are your guys like? What was? I guess we'll start with this. Like, what was your guys' reaction when you heard the news? Austin, we can. Well, actually, sorry, Austin. I'm going to throw this to Mikka because Mikka is the French football like connoisseur out of us. So, Mikka, just like your initial reaction when Alexy announced, well, when it was kind of discovered that Alexy was leaving through the grapevine, how did that news kind of hit?
Yeah, it's interesting because my first thought was that it couldn't have been for football or sporting reasons, which kind of gives me a little bit of comfort because I think he knew, and I think we all knew, as we've discussed on this podcast before, that he was really going to be leading the line for us, probably along with Lomis or trading off here and there starts. But I think he was supposed to be really the crown jewel of this season's attack. So I knew, I feel like I knew in my heart when I first heard the news that it wasn't because of that. It was probably something personal. But it is interesting to note because I think if y'all recall the piece that was done by Get French Football News, the headline was, "I don't see myself going back to Europe." That's for sure. So, but that's pre-corona. So things change and, it's a shame because I think we were really all looking forward to seeing what he could do. He's 26 years old. He's in his prime, or at least entering his prime. It would have been really cool to see him in his prime for Locomotive. But there are things bigger than sport, and I'm sure that's what took him back home. So I wish him the best of luck, and it'll be interesting to see if he plays somewhere in France or elsewhere in Europe.
Yeah, I mean, it definitely caught me a little bit off guard, and I think it highlights why those non-sporting reasons. But I mean, Christian and Austin, I think we've all spoken about him as kind of that important figure and a potentially just a very, very gifted player technically. How big of a loss is this, taking out the fact that obviously we wish him the best. We know there's no hard feelings with Locomotive. We know that it was for personal reasons. So I do want to stress that obviously we don't harbor any ill will towards Alexy. He's made the best decision for him and his family. But I mean, how big of a loss do you think this is for Locomotive? I mean, we spoke somewhat about the depth of the team, and right now, like, the attack is looking like all of a sudden like a little threadbare up there.
Yeah, definitely his loss is going to be missed on the squad, and me, I was a big fan of his. Just, I know the strikers are going to miss his crosses in.
Yeah.
And, but, hopefully everything's good with them. But definitely I think we're going to feel the effect of him not being here anymore. And it'd be nice, like Mikka said, hopefully he goes and plays in Europe or hopefully maybe in France or something, but it's crazy how just one player can make a difference on how you feel about a squad, about the depth of it. So, I mean, if anybody, we'd want Mark in this situation to take care of it. So hopefully, either he's got somebody else lined up or he feels like with the squad we've got right now, we can keep moving on.
Yeah, for me, I'm still a little bit indifferent about it, honestly. Just because I could be wrong. Maybe I just forgot, but I feel like last year wasn't really his year, for a lot of different reasons. I don't think he contributed that much to our successes last year. Obviously, he's part of the team. He does his part. But if you were to ask, how did we do so well last season? I don't think anyone comes up to you and says Bosetti. So to me, it's kind of losing something that you didn't even really know that you had. So I don't think that we're missing anything. Also, you could also say that, now we don't have Kiesewetter as well, but also in the last part of the season where Bosetti was playing, we didn't have Kiesewetter either, or at least that he wasn't showing up like he did. He was there. He wasn't showing up like he was in the middle of the season.
Yeah, that's fair.
So I think that honestly, as far as the best players on the team, we're still the same team that we were last season, though now, of course, lacking a little bit of depth there because we don't have Kiesewetter and we don't have Bosetti now, but we do have Lomas. So if anything, I think we're really just back at square one, which isn't a terrible for us, all things considered. And I don't know what the rules are or whatever, but there's still rumors out there that Leandro Carijo from Bravos has eyes on, or at least the club has eyes on him. So I don't know how soon he could end up playing for us, if that's something that's going to be allowed to happen this season, anything like that. With the way this club operates, that might be the bombshell that they drop on us on July 10th. So I'll keep my fingers crossed.
He might just suit up. They might not even make an announcement.
Yeah, he's just out. He's just out there with the. I guess at this point I don't even know what shirt he would wear. He could have the number 7 now. I don't know. But it is an interesting point, and I mean, I guess the larger question is, first and foremost, who. I mean, because I see Bosetti as a very kind of like technical attacking midfielder. He can play on the wing. So I mean, who do you guys see as that person that you see, like, when you think of the type of like technical ability that he brings? Like, who are you now looking at where you're like, okay, this is the person that kind of needs to step in and fill that gap that is currently on the squad?
I think it has to be Dylan Mahrez, just because he's kind of the Velasquez replacement, and he did, to be fair to him, he did look very good in preseason from what I could tell. That's a lot to ask of a new player, obviously, especially because, as we all, I think, agree, it's a little bit different when you join a Mark Lowry team, because there is a learning curve with his tactics and the way that he likes to possess the ball. But he seems like the most natural, I guess you could say, replacement, in-squad replacement for that. I don't know that he has a cross on him quite like Bosetti does, but maybe he can be that guy for us. He certainly has really good dribbling from what I could tell. So maybe that could be him.
And I think it's probably important to also remind listeners and also ourselves, because I know, I mean, even me, it's been 3 months since we watched this team,
Yeah.
And even then it was one game and we had a lot of new faces on the team. So, it is an opportunity for those new places like Fabrice or Zola or Said to, make an impact. I think if anything, it just is even more motivation for those players, because there is a spot now, there's a spot to be taken. They're all, at least to us, still relatively unproven. And I would assume to Mark as well. I think you have to prove yourself on the field no matter what you do, in training. So I think that just makes the season a little bit more, even that much more interesting for us. And that now maybe that pushes everyone to try a little bit harder.
Yeah, that's a good point. I mean, I think you have a good shout there with Said, because I think in terms of I think we knew that Mahrez was really part of like the first team plans, and we saw he got whatever, like 75 minutes or so in Orange County, I think. He started, and I think we knew that he would be part of the plans. Said didn't play in that first game, and I think we maybe thought that he was more brought in. He's kind of a depth guy. He's brought in a little more on the fringes, but this, as you said, Christian, like, this could be an opportunity for a guy like him to kind of move from the fringe into a more kind of starring or central role to the first team. So that is an interesting thing, because when we think about the depth, that sometimes when we carried such a small roster that it sometimes feels like one player is like, oh my God, like, who's even going to suit up? But we still have a good team, and I think it's worth reminding everyone of that. But who now? I mean, do you think that Locomotive go out and fill that gap, or try to in whatever semblance of a transfer season that there is? Do you think they are looking for a Bosetti replacement right now? do you think they're in the market for a guy like Carrijo? Do you think Mountain Star pulled the trigger on something like that with the current, kind of business climate and sports climate in mind?
It seems probably risky to do it with someone, that's not in-house. I think with Carrijo, it's more of an in-house transaction where, if they wanted to, they could keep tabs on how everything was going with him. Whereas if you're shopping around the world, because there hasn't been soccer going on, it's a little bit harder to see if you're making a safe investment when you decide to pay these players. So I can't imagine that they're doing much shopping personally.
Yeah, I'd have to agree on that. It's like you said, it's a lot easier to keep an eye on somebody like that, just being at the sister club over there. And I mean, even at that, bringing somebody like Carrijo in would also, help kind of bring up, I wouldn't say the morale of the team, but necessarily like get more fan engagement from across the border as well. Maybe get them to start following the team a little bit more. So I see it kind of like as don't get me wrong, Carrijo is a great player, but maybe they're going to also kind of do it on a marketing standpoint to kind of bring him over. And maybe that'll kind of open up the floodgates as well as maybe, who knows, in the future, maybe a Locomotive player will make that jump up to Liga MX and make that transfer over to FC Juarez. So hopefully it's the first one that happens between the two clubs, and hopefully it's not the last either.
Mikka, anyone on the wish list? Any semi-realistic player out there that you would want to get Locomotive to get there?
Semi-realistic. Damn.
Who's the unrealistic?
I mean, there's this guy called Messi who is insane. And I hear he's getting tired of his club. No, yeah. I actually haven't thought about this. I've just, I am really disappointed that Bosetti has departed. I was really looking forward to seeing what he could do with a full preseason under his belt and looking fitter than he did when he joined. I don't know, man. I mean, maybe we can convince Kieswetter to just come on loan for a little bit, because I don't know if you guys saw those Fire Festival sandwiches that they're serving the MLS players, but we can do so much better than that in El Paso, Jerome. Want to just come on loan for a little bit? It's
like we got plenty of tacos over here, man.
Yeah. That was one of the funniest things that I've seen, like the bag lunch that MLS players got. Omar Gonzalez was the first one that I saw post a picture of it, and it was just sad. It was sad to see. But yeah, Fire Festival is exactly what it was. That's
the funniest part is when you contrast it with he posted a picture of the menu too.
Yeah.
And when you read what the menu says, when you what you get, it's one of those tweets where you see what your hamburger looks like in the McDonald's ad and what it looks like when you actually get it. That's literally what it is.
Well, and it also said that it was $65 value, which I mean, it makes sense because MLS is the Fire Festival of soccer leagues. So, right. I mean,
hashtag MLS
they did those players dirty.
Maybe, I don't know. Stranger things have happened, I guess. But we, I think we're in a place where we probably now, just based on whatever we were paying Alexy, I feel like we probably have some space in the budget salary wise. It's just a matter of with the complexity of what's going on in soccer, worldwide, and the way that contracts are being extended for these short periods where it's we're going to do just a small extension out to the end of the season, or all of those kind of complexities or intricacies of contract law in Europe and that sort of thing, or even in the US, and the way that contracts would be expiring in theory because it's the summer, but maybe they're not. I think it is a tough environment to do business in. Despite the fact that they probably have the cash. So I think, like you guys are saying, I think the domestic targets are probably the more realistic, or those kind of in-house targets might be the more realistic. But because we can basically bring them in for, whatever kind of room we have in the salary budget rather than having to go shopping in a broader sense. But I do think I don't know. I think just combining, kind of your points, Mikka and Christian, I think just to round out the Bosetti news, I think it is in a lot of ways, as you said, Christian, we don't really know what we're missing, but it's almost that makes it kind of more painful in a way, because I think we kind of thought, especially based on the preseason that he had and just his ability overall, I think we all kind of assumed like, okay, he's fit now. Like, he wasn't fit when he got here, and that's why he kind of struggled to make an impact. And now, like, he's been with the team for a whole off season. He's in better condition. Like, he's ready to go, and he's looking good in preseason. And then, it's cut short. So I think that's really just the unfulfilled potential is kind of where a lot of the pain of Alexy leaving, is, rather than it being, quite so impactful as like Velasquez or Kiesewetter, where it's like, actual impact versus potential impact. So it is a difficult departure. I am happy, that he's doing what's right by his family, and especially since we know like these times have brought things into sharp contrast, I think, and like sports are not the most important thing. We can get caught up in these type of things, but ultimately, like, he has to do what's right by his family. So we obviously wish him the best of luck, and hopefully we see him playing again soon. I hope, in theory, like, he could go back to Nice and play for his boyhood club, and maybe this is just the start of some sort of like fairy tale ending for Alexy. But yeah, I think for the rest of us right now, we're just hoping that Locomotive can really field a competitive team, and whenever they do start in this group, I mean, I think we all expect Locomotive to make it out of it. But can this attacking group do it? Is really the question. Like, are they up to the task? I mean, of the people that are left, like, is Lomas now kind of your top attacking threat in terms of like goals scored? Like, are we really looking for Lomas to lead the line and just be the man when it comes to scoring goals now?
Yeah, I think he has to be, because like you said, we're threadbare. And that's, I mean, he was billed that way when we bought him, as someone that has scored goals in this league, has proven to have done so. I mean, of course, that was in the Eastern Conference, but I think he'll have even more space with us. So, yeah, I hope that he takes this opportunity to really make the number 9 position his own. And he's a bit of a different profile from attackers we've had in the past. But yeah, it's probably going to have to be him, and it'll be interesting to see kind of how we set up around him and how we play to his strengths. Because I mean, yeah, like we've talked about in the preseason, he's a big guy, but he scores a lot of technical goals with his feet. So he's an exciting one for sure.
So is it Lomas or Gomez? That's the question. Gomez. Bafatimbi Gomes. Now there's a striker. Hey. No, but I know Josue Aron Gomez has kind of been left out of this conversation. I mean, Christian, we look into him to get back to last season's form as well. Is that a big part of this?
I think so. I mean, I think that he has, on par a season as he did with, the time that he was with us and playing last year. Obviously, he wasn't with us and playing the full season last year, but I think he gets back to it. Obviously, I don't know that he'll score every game for us, but I have no doubt that he'll be, number 2. If Lomas doesn't, score all the goals for us, then it'll be Gomez. It's going to be one of them too. I don't think that anyone else on the team will be competing with them.
And I think actually I think Gomez could be like a good foil for Lomis.
Yeah.
Just as kind of
false
like the
nine up there.
Yeah, it's kind of like a shadow striker type thing, type setup. So maybe we just go with both. I mean, we've always said this about Locomotive is where the goal is coming from. We create chances, we possess the ball, but maybe we just need to throw everyone on there that we can, everyone that we do have. So
another name, Austin, that hasn't been brought up, Omar Salgado, the hometown kid. I mean, are we looking to Omar to we know that we want more production out of Omar, but I mean, with this setup now, do you think that he has a better chance of being a big piece of that attacking contribution?
I mean, obviously, there's always that opportunity, but I think we saw Omar at his best, playing out on the wing and distributing a little bit more. So more than anything, I think that's where I'd want to see him again, where he plays at his strength and, hopefully feeding that ball into the middle there. But yeah, I think it's going to be Josue and Lomas getting those goals this season.
Yeah, I think the potential is there for a big season, and hopefully as this comes back, and obviously we're mostly going to be watching from afar. I will obviously be watching from afar regardless. But as this comes back, and hopefully we can implement the right things to keep fans and players and everyone safe, staff safe, and we can get USL back on track in a responsible way. And hopefully a lot of our concerns that we spoke about at the beginning of the episode are ancient history by the time things actually get going. And we then look at USL as like, wow, this is, the model for how things should go. I mean, is it likely? Maybe not, but who knows? Maybe it'll work. So I hopefully we're talking about this in a positive light come the start of the actual season, and it goes well. But yeah, I'm excited in a lot of ways. I'm nervous, but I'm excited for Locomotive to be back. I know the players will be itching to get back onto the field and show what they can do. Us being back, we are happy to return for you, and you can find us on all of the big podcast platforms, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and Google Play. And you can check us out on all our social at Seriously Loco, Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, etc. And we will be bringing you guys any and all Locomotive content as we play in this weird coronavirus shortened season. And until next time, stay loco.